Okay.
This is the March 16th meeting of the Economic Development Commission. With us tonight, we have Serena Fuller and Amber Bach, members of the commission, myself, Michael McMahon, and we have several members of the public. We'll start with public comments. Any public comments?
I just want to learn what you all do to see how I could support you.
Okay, thank you. Now we go into old business, changes in business developments in town. Typically, I come up with some of them that I can think of, and then we open it up and we add to them. The Agricultural Committee is planning several events for the fall of 2002. They're thinking of a couple of tractor events and other agricultural things that they used to have in April or May. Now they're thinking of holding them in the fall. This next one is interesting, given your comment. The planning board's considering a bylaw or moratorium for consideration at the May town meeting related to large developments in town. We'll find out further information as time goes on. There's some additional residential developments being considered for the west side of town. They are not currently, as far as I know, before the planning board. The planning board has a subcommittee considering a bylaw on short-term rentals of residential property. This would be Airbnb type rentals. From what the planning board has said in the past, currently they're not allowed in town. But they're considering a possibility of allowing them with some kind of rules so that you're not disturbing the neighbors. Maybe you're registering your business with the town, so if there's problems, the police can contact the owner or whatever, because right now, the town doesn't know that the Airbnb or similar is even operating. The state passed some laws several years ago to tax Airbnbs like a hotel tax. I don't know what the percentage is. They're supposed to register with a state agency in Boston, etc.
3%.
A 32-acre farm is being sold to a developer on the west side of town if the town doesn't purchase the property using CPC funds. It would have to then be approved at the next town meeting. A member of the Ag Commission went to a selectmen's meeting, brought it up, and their response was, well, you have to meet the April 1st deadline to get it on the town agenda at the annual town meeting, so I'm not sure what's happening beyond that. The former medical building on College Highway, I believe it's 800 College Highway, next to Southwick Village, it was for lease. They had a big sign for lease. It was on loopnet.com, which is commercial real estate, for a while. That disappeared. It was then for sale for $400 and something thousand. I went by there this morning, and now the for lease sign is back up. The town selectmen would like to see a medical doctor's office in town. We have dentists and rehab and other things. They like to see a regular doctor. The property owner has the place listed with a real estate agency in Agawam, and it doesn't look like they're having any bites. They were trying to rent it before. I don't know what their current rate is, but prior to put it for sale, they were trying to rent it for $20 a square foot, and it's 2,500 square feet. From what I can see in the Springfield area, doctors' offices, first doctors' practices are being bought out by hospitals in the area, and they're closing offices. In Westfield, up toward the airport, off Route 10, was Riverbend. They've closed that office apparently as of last month. And I don't know how many doctors they had there, but that's gone. And they've moved doctors to Chicopee and moved some to Agawam. And other doctors have apparently left the practice and they're
Well, they
going
closed their
elsewhere.
whole entire dermatology.
That was last year, yeah.
Yep.
They shut that down. That was in several locations in the Springfield area. So, I'm not sure if they'll be able to get a doctor or a regular physician or physicians doing regular medical practice for that building.
I wonder if they're learning that they can do it by telemed.
Oh, there's all sorts of
That's
options in
gotta
the
be
last 2
impacting.
years.
Well, the other thing is too,
Yeah,
is when you are a private physician or a private doctor's office, the insurance just kills you, and that's why
Yeah.
they end up joining
I-
these
I-
practices. I mean, it's just,
Yep.
And that's why the
Astronomical.
practices are being bought out by Mercy or bought out by Bay State.
the only other thing I know is like some of them, I have a girlfriend and she goes to her doctor. Her doctor went into practice for himself, but he doesn't bill through insurance. You pay.
You pay, yep.
You just pay for the.
Oh, there's
the
one of these concierge type doctors, as they call them.
Yeah, and so you can do like a plan where you pay a certain amount for the year, for the month,
Yeah,
and that should cover,
right.
but,
Your office visits.
yeah,
and
your
stuff.
office visits and stuff.
I think more doctors need to be brave and do that.
Well, you can reduce your staff because you're not paying one or more people to do nothing but shuffle paperwork.
Administration.
My sister-in-law has a similar situation, and the downside is we're in that doctor's office waiting for sometimes 2 or more hours.
Ooh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
I thought that was supposed to be the creme de la creme, so you could make an appointment for this afternoon. And
Yeah, but if they're giving you full, you know what I mean, you never
He
know,
does
get
give
in
you
there.
the time you need.
Right.
I gotta give him that.
That's what I was
That's the
gonna
plus
say,
minus. You know, you kind of
Yeah.
get cranky, but you know he's given somebody the time that you would want
Right.
as
instead
well.
of 10
Right.
minutes.
Yeah,
So can I
I-
ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so the way that I look at an economic development committee is, would that say that building next to the old American Inn? That used to be my doctor, I used to go there. Do you solicit doctors, or do
No.
you have like
No.
a recruitment process that you can?
We have no budget. We have no paid employees. We have no town money. Other towns can go out, or a Chamber of Commerce can go out and can offer them, we'll get you 2 months free rent,
Whatever,
or
yeah,
we'll do whatever.
Right.
We have nothing.
No.
We can't give you cash to help you to move in, or say, here's $3,000 when you move in to fix up the office or the store or whatever it might be to open up.
and
Well, the-
businesses that may be interested in coming into town, they don't even contact us.
No, we don't even know they exist.
So what do you do then?
So far, well, we hold.
And I'm
a
not
whole-
trying to be
No,
crass,
I
okay.
understand, and,
No, I know.
and we, you know, this is a typical question that's been asked many times. So we, at this point, you know, we meet on a regular basis, we discuss if there's a new business that comes in, we go and welcome them to the town. You know, we pair up with some of the other towns and do home and business shows. We ran a job fair over the winter, for free to the public and for free for our businesses.
We put out
He
I call
puts-
it an eating and drinking
Yep,
establishment.
he puts out a flyer.
It's like 34, 35 bars and restaurants in town. We list them by part of town they're in. And prior to COVID, when there were events going on, the annual art show or we used to have theater here in town, plays and things, we would have copies of the brochures. Sometimes maybe you'd go to the theater 2 o'clock in the afternoon and say, gee, where can we grab something to eat? We'd say, here's all the eating and drinking establishments. It just lists them. It doesn't say, go to this one, or it doesn't promote one or the other. It's whoever's got a license from the town, here's the list of them.
So we did have a larger budget. I think we had $1,200.
Right, we had 1,200 last
Prior
year.
to, well, and I think going up until, pretty
Right.
much up until this past year, we were dropped down to $600. So for $600, it's even hard to put the small business signs out, you know, shop
Right.
small business and stuff like that. So, you know, we're kind of at a standstill at the moment with, because we are part of some of the different, chamber of commerces and stuff like that. So,
So you don't have to account to the select board or to the planning department how you're going to promote Southwick for the empty buildings.
If we
businesses.
spend money, everything goes through the town, every penny. We can't spend money without them. They don't ask us to promote that
But you have
building,
that on
for
your
example.
agenda. You have some input from them?
I'll get to that in a few minutes.
That's what I was interested in hearing.
So that's a good question. We'd like to do more. We'd like to be more in the loop, like the project on College Highway that didn't go forward. We knew about it by going to a selectmen's meeting or a planning board meeting. They don't tell us in advance. So
So even though it was a large
Right.
business
We
that
knew
was
nothing
coming
about
into
it.
town, we did not know about it personally. We weren't told about it.
one of the planning board
So
meetings.
This is apropos then, this is consistent, this
Right.
isn't something that just recently
Oh,
started.
no, this has been going on for years. At one of the planning board meetings, February or March of last year, Rob Levesque and company from Westfield came to the planning board and said, I have a client, and the client is such and such construction company. They weren't gonna be the occupant, they were gonna be the
Correct.
construction company. They want to build a large building. How do you feel about the concept? And they said, well, how big is the building? You know, what's it gonna look like? You know, is it 2 stories high or 1 story high? And they were getting vague information. They then submitted their plan to the planning board and started the public hearing process. And that's where the name then came out.
I.e. the Bailey project,
Right.
okay. Okay,
So any other businesses or things? I think
I
some
think
little.
that decor. I think
Right, that's
but
what I
that
was just about
affordable
to say.
decor opened. I don't know. If
Did
you
it? I haven't been in there. I
haven't
saw
been in
this-
there either.
I saw the sign and the stoves
Right.
moved up to the corner
Right.
of the building. Any other businesses? or
Nothing that I can speak of at the moment yet, so, no.
She's a real estate agent, so she may be involved
Oh, okay.
with projects with clients that.
Yeah, it's not gonna be anything major, but it will be for economic development, so that's good.
Okay. Now going on to the other topic, in terms of review or recap, the town, the way they operate, they have 2 Saturdays in February or March that they meet with each town department, committee, commission, etc. And they give them 5 or 10 minutes to talk about what they want for the coming year's budget. They give the fire department maybe 20 minutes or an hour or whatever it might be. So we had our 5 or 10 minutes in the sun on March 5th. And Serena was there.
Thank you.
We explained briefly if we had an increase in budget, and we suggested, each department suggests how much of a budget they want. We said increasing it from $600 up to $2,000. And we explained that if you're trying to buy signs or you're trying to hold events like having the job fair or this coming fiscal year, if we have the home and business fair again, it costs some money to have some refreshments or some miscellaneous. You try to get some publicity and maybe a couple of ads in the Westfield News or Springfield Republican or whatever it might be. So we went down through that, and there's a couple of new members on the FinCon that weren't there in the past. They've only joined in the last year or two, and one of them said, what's the benefit of being a member of a Chamber of Commerce? So I kind of explained that the Greater Westfield Chamber has 2 or 3 events every year in Southwick, which gets the business community from Westfield and surrounding towns to come to Southwick. And then all of a sudden you've got a nice restaurant here. Oh, you've got a nice golf course here. So they get exposed to it. And one of the big things is you then happen to mention to them casually, Well, the commercial and industrial real estate tax rate in Westfield is $36 and some odd cents per thousand. It's $34 and some odd cents per year in Agawam. And in Southwick, it's $16.98. You know, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So that was one comment from somebody.
But what's the benefit? What
Well,
what do
I
they do
was
with
saying,
that knowledge?
it's exposing Southwick that maybe they consider having a business in Southwick because the tax rate is less than half of what it is in Westfield.
The members
So, and the other
of that
thing,
chamber
yeah,
of
but the
Right.
other thing with the
The
chamber.
business members.
Right, the other
Right.
thing with the Chamber of Commerce is to see what other towns are actually doing for their businesses.
Right.
And the things and the events that they're holding and trying to implement them here.
That's why
have,
we had a
but
job
haven't been
fair
able-
here.
Yeah, we had a
We
job
haven't
fair
been
here,
able
but we haven't been able to implement a lot of the stuff that they're doing in, say, Westfield and so on and so forth, because we can't advertise, we can't do signs, you know.
For,
It minimizes your networking.
for example,
capabilities.
the eating and drinking establishments in town, I can copy them on a town copy machine in black and white. If I want anything in color, I've got to go to Southwoods, and a sheet of paper in color from Southwoods is 35 or 40 cents for one sheet. A couple of years ago, when we had the $1,200 budget, we were actually able to print 50 or 100 of the restaurant lists in color. You know, just the simplest little things. We have signs, shop local, shop small. Each of those panels cost about $30 or $35. I don't know how much they are now, post-COVID, but that's what they were a couple of years ago. And I've got them, we use a local print shop on Wally Way, a local place. And I did it in a different color. What I found is if you do stuff in white, black letters, whatever, people don't read it or don't notice it. So if you do it in a version of yellow and put black on it, people can see it. So it's like, okay, we need bucks to make these signs. So those are some of the types of things. One of the other people, oh, you should work with the master plan committee and come back to us in 2 to 4 years. This is a new member of the finance committee. It's like,
For what?
oh,
Come back in 2 years for what?
for whatever your ideas are for economic development in 2 to 4 years after the new master plan is completed.
You should be working in tandem with them,
Well,
shouldn't you?
she's on it.
Oh, okay.
So we've been trying. Another place,
Did you get this?
let me see if I've got a couple of copies. Yeah, I do.
You have an extra.
Yeah, I do have an extra
Oh,
one.
this was in Business West. Yep, I saw
Yeah,
it.
you see that?
basically, every year,
Yeah, I saw that article.
Do you want it?
No, I
oh, okay. Every year, Business West does a 2 or 3 page article on different towns, everything from the Berkshires to Wilbraham. You don't pay for advertising, you don't pay for the thing, it's a freebie. I've tried to promote Southwick with Business West for the last 8 or 10 years. They were doing it for other towns, but not Southwick. I finally, in talking to their staff, you'd see them at the business shows in Springfield and in Hartford. I'd see them, they'd say, oh, you're the guy from Southwick. So that we could get on here. So except for, I think 2020, they didn't do an article on us because the town was too busy and couldn't talk to the reporter. That's what the editor told me. Because we were scheduled. But prior to that, for like 7 or 8 years, I got articles. So it's like, the town looks at it and says, oh, so what? I said,
Yeah.
if we can get our name out there, Business West has the subscriptions of 5 or 10,000 business people in Western Mass. I said, try to promote us. But what they promote is motocross and the lakes. I said, there's so much more to Southwick than that. There's the small businesses, we've got housing developments, and that helps the people who move there are paying real estate tax. It also helps small businesses who might be doing the rug shampooing and the maintaining your furnace, the landscapers. I mean, in my neighborhood, most people have landscapers, and there are landscaping companies I've never heard of, and I don't even know where they're from, but obviously they're making some money every week cutting grass and doing snow and everything else. It provides money that then circulates, hopefully, to the gas stations, to the restaurants, the bars, etc. in town.
Insurance companies,
Right.
banks.
Right.
Yep.
So that's why in looking at this, and every time they do this, they send a reporter from Springfield out here, and they talk to Carl and one of the selectmen. The selectmen decide among themselves which one will talk to the reporter. So this particular article was interesting because it was like 4 or 5 months after the development on College Highway that didn't happen. So I was like, God, I wonder what they're going to say. And in reading this, they're talking about balance. That, yeah, we need more housing in town, but in order to cut down the real estate tax, and they're talking about senior citizens who live around the lakes and other areas, to reduce their tax rate, to keep it low, we need some businesses in town. So it's finding that balance of what type of business or how big a business, do you want another gas station or used car lot? Or do you want something else? And what seems to be popular in the last 3 or 4 years in town is there's 3 or 4 of these quasi-consignment shops. Apparently, they're doing a booming business, the same as the places selling pizza. And maybe you want a bud with your pizza.
Right.
So it's just different types of businesses. The same as when people ask me about what's the price of housing in town, I said, you can get a Cape Cod built after World War II for 150 or 200,000, or you can spend 800,000 up at the ranch. It's whatever you can afford and whatever you want. And then, from a real estate perspective, Amber has told us, well, there's not much between 350 and 500. Or,
It's not much
whatever
lower,
number.
it's the lower amounts, that there's just nothing.
So in terms of back to the selectmen, this is what they told the reporter. So I said, if you look at this article again, they're talking about balance, they're talking about diversity of types of businesses, etc. That's giving us some hint as to what they're looking for. The town generally, it doesn't want to be held down. It doesn't want to have to deal with a master plan. It doesn't want to have
Rules.
it doesn't want any kind of a plan or anything that it then can be held to. We'll see it definition of a swamp. We know it when we see it. When you're in 2 feet of water, you say, oh, I think there's a water problem.
I've heard them say that.
You're kidding. Just,
That exact phrase. I'll know it when I see it.
so hopefully with the master plan effort and the surveys and public meetings, they'll have to get input from the public. Hopefully they'll be able to nail some of that down.
But this isn't the first rodeo, though, with the master plan.
Well, they had a master plan in '67, and they had another one they
1990.
tried in the 1990s.
I remember that.
And then they tried another one after that, but it disappeared because some people didn't want it. The thing is, if you talk to 5 people in Southwick, and you include people who've been here for decades and decades and decades, and some business owners, they'll tell you, just lock the gates coming into town. I'm happy with the way it is. We don't need no growth. We don't need nothing. It's like, is that realistic to keep the town going? Because they want to spend money on the schools, and I'm not against that or anything, but the revenue's gotta come from somewhere. And if it's not coming from Boston, it's coming from the homeowners. So it just, that's where you have to have a kind of a
Were your
balance.
other FinCom questions?
The FinCon stuff was just the comments they
Those
made.
those
Yeah.
two comments.
That was it.
Are they taking seriously your proposal for that $2,000?
You have no idea. Because the way the FinCon and the Board of Selectmen operate in this town, they get the input from all the departments and everything else.
And there's no output.
Then, the week before the annual town meeting in May, they put the budget, they put it together sometime prior to that, and they finally print it out, so you have to scurry around this building trying to find a copy of it, because they don't want to show it to anyone until at the town meeting, where you then flip through and say, is my
Oh, look.
department still in
We
existence?
We got
or not?
$600.
Yeah, but you're losing the impact of it by that point,
Right. They,
and the cohesiveness within the departments.
right. I can tell you that regular departments in this town, I won't identify which departments, the way they find out their budget is at the annual town meeting. I try to get a copy of the budget the week before, and I make a photocopy of the page or pages for that particular department and give it to the department head and say, this is what you're looking at. And they've never seen it because it is not shared. And apparently, that's the way it's been going since I moved to town 20 years ago now. And apparently it's been going on for, I don't know how long before that, but it's been apparently a long time. So it sounds like you're kind of suggesting there should be a different process.
Oh, absolutely. Communication and transparency is vital for our community.
Right.
So that people feel as if they're not being all of a sudden just slam-based with, oh, by the way, this is what's gonna happen in the town. So that's where I want to start being a little bit more in the loop and to advocate for that piece, which is just communication within just under this umbrella, the town hall.
Let's say prior to March 15th of last year, before the College Highway project came, I would attend select board meetings, and I've been attending them for 18 or 19 years. Other than myself and maybe the police chief or the fire chief, if they had something on the select board agenda for that night, and one or two reporters, there used to be the Southwick Suffield News and Westfield News, etc., and the Republican used to send somebody from Springfield. Other than reporters, nobody attended. If you went to a planning board meeting, no one attended the planning board meeting except the applicant and Rob Levesque or whoever their engineer or consultants were, and myself and the owner of Suburban Chevrolet, an older man. He would attend. Nobody else did. I mean, that's life. But then I've never gone to school board meetings, and I don't live on the lake or anything, so I don't go to their
slide over.
meetings.
Here, I'll set it.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You're here.
Oh, boy. Had something go on at the station as soon as I pulled back in.
Craig Samuelson has now joined the meeting. So as we were saying, that's how things have been operated. Not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent, that's just
Which is the reality.
the reality. So in terms of, let's say, that's a little bit of input in terms of the select board, in terms of what they told a reporter and then ended up coming in print. Another new article for 2022 should be appearing in the month of May in Business West. And the way we get the article is you pay Business West a fee of $50, and they send you a PDF, a nice PDF of the 2 or 3 page article. I've been buying that for years. The town isn't
He
even
means out of
aware.
Out of
pocket.
pocket, I assumed.
Yeah. Because the town only purchases
Michael's
things.
actually pays for quite
A lot of
a few
this, yeah.
things out of
The
pocket.
town only buys stuff with a purchase order.
How long does that take to go through, Michael?
Less than a week.
Okay.
But when it gets paid, could be a month or two. I don't know when they actually cut the checks, because they only cut checks once or twice a month. But a lot of businesses don't want to deal with purchase orders. They've been using debit cards or credit cards for decades. Except the town, we're back in the 1850s.
So that's another thing that can be identified to expedite processes.
Yeah, but good luck with that. I've seen various departments try to move processes. And since I've been here in 20 years, we're into our third accountant, and they all follow the process that's written on the stone tablets that are passed on to them when they take the job. So anything else going on in town? Craig,
For old, no.
we talked about some other developments might be coming. 800 College Highway, the former medical office, that's back for lease. They've changed the sign from for sale to for lease. And all the businesses seem, or most of the businesses seem to have held up over the last 2 years. We haven't had much in the way of businesses disappearing. Some businesses have been sold, like Red Riding Hood's Basket sold to a new person, and they opened up a couple of months ago. Krabby Joe's, the real estate was sold to a different property owner, and he's in the process dealing with the planning board. So he can make some changes.
So I know only from social media that one of our large farms is not going to be opening up.
Yes,
this
I,
year.
Meadowview,
Right.
yeah.
And
Which one?
Meadowview.
Really?
He's
yeah,
got cancer,
Husband
yeah.
has-
The guy's in
he's
hospice care, apparently.
so,
Such a nice
I'm-
guy,
Yeah,
Ben.
I mean, the whole family, the whole I mean, for so many reasons, you know, it's an upsetting thing. I mean, I think they employ a lot of people, especially in town as well. I mean, it's a great product. So that'll be interesting to see how that.
You know,
too bad.
if the real estate gets sold, or if it gets sold, you know, to who and what would they do with it, or,
I mean, they've done a lot of stuff.
It's
you know.
APR property though.
well, the town, yeah.
It's
still on.
APR, it's gotta stay APR.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully somebody, you know, takes it over.
But I believe
If
they
they
still
want.
do tobacco, and that's continuing. Their
Yeah, I was wondering
help
about
is
that.
staying on with the
Oh,
tobacco.
good. Well, that's good at least.
I was
Good.
wondering that, I
Yeah.
asked somebody about that.
It's just unfortunate. I just feel bad for them.
So I have another question. Who holds the businesses in town accountable for cleanliness and aesthetically looking balanced?
the health board, if you're licensed by the health board, they can control you. So if you're selling food items and that kind of stuff, the Board of Health has jurisdiction over you.
Right.
If you're just selling, let's say, clothes or fertilizer, there's nobody licensing you in town. If you're selling gasoline,
And there's no standard.
weights and measures make sure that your gallon is really a gallon, that kind of
Right.
thing.
But what I'm referring to is when you go into specific plazas,
Uh-huh.
the level of cleanliness, the level of weed control
Your
is just inexcusable.
your only hope, and I don't know if this person either has jurisdiction or if they see it within their own purview, would be the building inspector.
So you're talking about the same town that can't even take care of the weeds in their own sidewalk in the center of town?
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe you own the Notch, correct?
do.
Okay, so like the Notch, I would hold them as an example of standards. The same thing with the summer house. And like the Southwick Insurance, where you can see it visually. But then there's such a variety of other businesses that it just looks ratty.
As I say, your only hope, if you don't have a health permit or weights and measures isn't involved,
So
would be the building
economic-
inspector, and I don't know if it's in his jurisdiction or not, but he would be the only
No,
hope.
because we have no, there's no guidelines for businesses, so there's nothing for us to try
I
and
think you could
implement.
only make a complaint about safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
if the sidewalks are cracked and full of weeds, you have to file a complaint about the safety issue, and then it becomes his responsibility.
But I know what she's talking about as far as the looks go, because I did notice last year, it was horrendous.
It gets pretty shabby.
Oh.
It was
sometimes.
horrendous looking down the sidewalks, and I mean,
Oh,
those
yeah.
weeds were 3 feet high in some
From the
places.
sidewalks to, there's just the debris.
It was funny because somebody actually
Yeah.
mentioned it from another town to me. They're like, "Oh, Southwick, where the weeds are like 3 feet high and
It's
there's
hard for you
sidewalks."
to develop
And I
business
was
when it
just
looks
like,
so shabby,
right.
right?
That's why when you said earlier that one of the roles that you as a department have, or the commission, is to welcome new businesses. So I would think upon that welcoming would be, and here's our guidelines.
But the town,
we
look, the
want
town
you
doesn't
to
have
be
any
able to-
guidelines.
That'd be lovely.
Withhold.
Yeah, and what? And then I mean, we could very well give it to them, but who's gonna?
But there are no
enforce it?
guidelines, and there won't be any guidelines. The town is run by a board of selectmen. There's 3 people.
I understand.
Currently, and for at least the last 10 or 15 years, at least 2, if not all 3 of them, own businesses in town. They will not regulate. Anything that's a burden on a business will not happen. When the state redid College Highway in the center part of town and put in sidewalks, there was a long debate over who was going to clear the snow on the sidewalks. And town leadership said that will be a burden on the business. The town has to do it. And then they got cost figures. Well, how much would it cost for equipment and staffing and everything else? And it became such a hullabaloo that the town said, we'll buy a piece of equipment, but we're not doing everybody's sidewalks. The town will do the sidewalks that the town owns, where the town owns the land that's adjacent to the sidewalk. But if you own a business on College Highway, you have to make sure the snow's removed. Either you do it or you hire somebody or whatever. But the town wasn't gonna do it. Because I say it was a whole, went around for a couple of months.
Upstairs,
Wait.
land use.
Oh, that's my daughter.
Oh,
She's on the committee.
So when I was trained, I don't remember what we used to do, but it seemed like we used to have some incentive for a facelift way back when.
Oh, yeah, well, we were
Was it like a
Sam.
grant money or something that,
Was it Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, was it?
I don't remember.
Because I know I used them when I had to use got my first sign at my office. Yeah.
But I mean-
I mentioned that at the budget hearing on March 5th.
Yes, you did.
Oh,
Because I said, for example, Westfield is doing that right now. They're using ARPA money, which is the
ARPA money,
federal
yeah.
money the town gets. Like Southwick is getting $3 million out of ARPA. And they said, in fact, it was Russ said, that's an idea we might want to look into again. We used to do that years and years ago.
we did, yeah, I remember
Yeah, I
that.
do
That was an
remember it,
incentive
too.
for people to try to keep things looking nice, you know?
Yeah.
Above and beyond just pride.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying ARPA, A-R-P-A?
Well, it's the federal
American
disaster
Rescue.
money that
Yeah.
Congress passed last year, went to every state, and then it came down like Springfield's getting 50 or 100 million. Westfield got, I can't remember how many million. Southwick's getting 3 million. You get it in 2 halves in 2 different fiscal years. So the town already got 1.5 million, and the selectmen have decided to use part of the 1.5 million to pay for running the water
Water
main
line.
from the new pumping station on College Highway into Westfield to connect to Springfield water. No, it as a backup, because otherwise, when the town approved it at an annual town meeting, the town was gonna issue bonds, and then you'd pay off the bonds over 15 or 20 years or whatever. But if you can get, quote, free money, you know, that you don't have to repay, then use it for that kind of stuff. That's what the selectmen decided. What they're gonna do with the next 1.5 million that's coming this coming fiscal year, I have no idea.
So can you go to one of the meetings and ask for X and then give them reasons on paper as to why you want X amount of money?
We could try.
It's not a bad idea, I mean,
Yeah.
if you had like, maybe you have,
Business plan or
20
proposal.
different businesses, you know, 5 of them for being the cleanest business in town, or whatever, I mean, whatever, you know, the most improved business.
Target
Appearance.
some of the ones that need help.
Right.
Yeah.
And give them some incentive.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be a good idea.
Yeah, we could.
You know, if it's $100,000 that we get or go after, then
Cause
that's
they
what it
have,
is.
they have to spend that money too, right? They
Well,
can't just let it
oh,
sit
yeah.
there.
Right.
It has to be
Otherwise,
spent by a certain.
right.
And you'd have to have accountability as to where
yeah.
those funds were spent.
Oh, the town has extreme accountability.
But I mean, we could,
Down to the
we could
penny.
manage that though, right? I mean, for
Yeah.
businesses, right?
Yeah, why not?
We'd have
That
to
could
put
just be
together
like
a
an Excel
proposal
spreadsheet.
and what it would cost and how many businesses we'd serve. See, what the town has done up until now, again, using ARPA money, is Southwick and Agawam got together and they asked Boston for some of this ARPA money about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago. And they got some money, 200,000 or 300,000 between the two towns. They then gave the money to the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to dole out to small businesses that said that they were impacted by COVID. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission subbed that out, processing that to some nonprofit in Northampton. They promoted it. There were articles in the newspaper. I have no idea how many businesses in Southwick got money out of that, or how much money was spent, you know, went to South business. I couldn't tell you. I can tell you.
How was it advertised?
What?
And how was it
And
advertised?
Well, I know it was advertised because I saw the advertising. But by the same token, and this has never been in the press, the original PPP money, which was originally going to be loans to businesses to pay their employees to keep their businesses open, that money became, in effect, grants. Most of the businesses didn't have to pay it back. Millions upon millions of dollars went to like 200 businesses in Southwick. Some businesses got $50,000. Some of the manufacturers got $1 million or $2 million. The press never picked up on that.
But it was based on their payroll and their utilities.
Yeah, but then they kept changing the rules every 2
You
months.
still had to back it up
Right.
based on your utilities
Well, yeah,
and
but
your
they could,
payroll.
you know.
If you didn't have the full accounting of utilities and payroll with the use of that money, you weren't forgiven that full amount.
Right, no, I understand, but I just mean that money, the PPP money, could be used for you to pay your whole staff so that you could have a 4, 5, 6 month period. Let's say your payroll was $100,000 a year. You didn't have to worry about trying to find the 100,000 because your business was down, you weren't getting as many customers, etc. But you could continue to pay the employees, pay your rent, pay your utilities so that you didn't go under. And then say there were all sorts of iterations of that, and they kept changing the rules, and then there was the first money, and then that ran out, and then they refilled it several times. But I'm just saying, businesses have survived, most of them in town, and a lot of that was federal money that did come in. But the press didn't pick up on the local angle of that, be it TV or the newspapers or whatever. That's why businesses survived for that first 6 months or a year. Because with all the restrictions, otherwise they would have to not be open. Restaurants, you could operate at 25 or 30% of capacity, and then 50%. And you were restricted in terms of hours that you might have to shut down at 9 or 10 o'clock
Got
at
little
night.
books there.
Yeah,
True.
if somebody's upstairs.
You also need a bigger office to work
See you, Diane.
So,
Do you
But
want
for
this?
15 or
I have
18
it.
years, we never got the public in here. They never came.
Yeah, this is the first year,
Yeah, it is.
well, last year,
Yeah.
at the
No,
end.
the
Oh,
last,
yeah.
With
the last
Oh, with
9
the-
or 10
with the-
months. Prior to that,
the big
nobody ever
C.
came.
Yeah, the project is when people first started showing up, so otherwise nobody ever came.
well, I'd like to attend the next meeting, and I'd like to look into the ARPA piece and maybe come up with some ideas. I know you don't know me from the hole in the wall, but just a real quick little background. I do have a background in marketing. I was with Mobil Oil for years and did all their event marketing here in New England.
So you were involved in New York or when they moved to Texas?
I was involved with Texas. I was a Heritage Mobile employee based out of Westboro. And all of Massachusetts and Connecticut was my territory. But I was the one instrumental for being the sponsor at the Big E, being Ski 3, the Golf 3 promotions, our Lou Rettenmeyer race car Bush North driver. So I've got a lot of marketing in my background. I'm an executive recruiter as well. I did that for Mobil Oil, and I'm also working for one of the largest independent, privately held search firms in New England for the past 19 years called Management Search. So I'm very comfortable talking with large-scale businesses and with smaller businesses as well, trying to promote growth and finding the right talent and the right fit. I am going to say proudly that I was involved with Save Southwick. I was one of the founding members. And whether that's a positive or a negative at this table, don't know, but that was my preference to be in.
What was that?
That
Of
was
the
the
Carvana?
anti-Carvana.
Oh,
It was, yeah.
oh, okay.
So I felt very passionate about that. I like the ruralness of our community. I married into a family here in town, and I'm not a Southwickian, I am a transplant, but I do believe in a rural character, but I also understand the balance. And that's what I want to be more involved with, is really trying to understand what the balance is and make some changes in regards to the communication underneath this roof.
But see, part of the difficulty is, and it would start with the select board and the planning board,
Absolutely.
etc. And when I first came to economic development, I asked a question, and they said, no, you can't ask that question. I said, where does Southwick see itself in 3 to 5 years? And they said, no, we only look out 3 months.
Right. So I've gotten very educated over the past year, and it's very disheartening. And in speaking with Diane, I thought, well, I can squeeze a little bit of time out of my schedule and graciously do it. And I'm very resourceful, and I understand the limitations of no funds, but how you can be creative and still generating awareness and imagery in a variety of different mediums.
Well, that's why we came up with the restaurant
right.
brochure. We used to do a brochure of events in town for the year, but that became a horror story because organizations won't
Change.
update their
Yeah,
Facebook
change,
page
yeah.
or their
Right.
website until 2 weeks before the event.
And you lose.
They don't
the
plan,
impact.
you know,
Right,
like
right.
in
You
the
lose
fall,
impact.
we're gonna do X.
Yeah. And about 20 years ago, I got involved. That's when Exxon acquired Mobil, and they wanted me to relocate to Virginia. And my husband.
Oh, Fairfax,
He's
yes.
like, you can, or you could stay here, and I decided to stay. And so I had like a year transition, and I got involved with the Conservation Commission. And I spent every waking hour at the transfer station getting signatures to pass through the Community Preservation Act. So I feel now I've got more time and the desire to want to make more of an impact and support some of the smaller groups that need to have also a little bit of a voice or maybe some additional resources.
Because as I say, the basic thing is, where do the town fathers, where do they see the town going in
Right.
3 to 5 years? And then you can kind of dovetail in with it. But for the last 20 years, there's been no direction, and there's
No,
different people on the board. I'm not picking
No.
on anyone in particular.
right, I understand.
But if you ask 5 or 10 residents of the town, what do you see? Some want to shut the gates, and others want to add more housing.
That's true.
And other
That's-
ones want
That's where there has to be
a
the
grocery
balance.
store.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so with everything I just said, if I'm welcome to come to the next meeting, I'd like to.
Sure.
And bring a
Yeah.
couple of ideas.
Do you have a card at all?
Join our commission.
We'll
So
Maybe
we haven't
don't
always
know.
been this tiny,
Yeah.
and we used to be a little bit more meaningful way back in the days. But I think, one thing that would be important for us, and we struggle with this, is what is expected of us right now. I mean, we need to have meaning, otherwise it's not worth
Well,
getting out of bed.
just in this brief little conversation, God, you all should be doing so much more in conjunction with the rest of the departments.
Well,
And
see, the
it's just amazing that there's
town
not
go-
that communication
town
piece.
government
It's true.
does not
Because you're all
have,
business owners and a realtor. I'm not sure what you do, Mike, but it's just,
I'm retired.
God bless you, I'm working towards that.
The town,
He's one of those government employees, so he never had to work. for a
Oh, so he
living.
was always retired, no. Sorry.
if you saw the hellholes in Colombia and Venezuela,
Oh, yeah.
but anyway, all the boards and committees don't get together once every decade.
That's one of the things that I'm hoping that we're gonna be able to maybe change with
You know, so
the
it's
next
just-
new election that's coming up too.
That's why I have, on March 5th, or maybe it was the last selectmen's meeting, a member of the Ag Commission was there. So after he finished and he left the room, I chased after him and talked to him, what was Ag doing, at this point? And he
Right.
told me what their
The
general plans
interesting
are.
piece though, if you remember what Russ had said during that meeting though, Michael, was he and Art had been talking about it. Well, if you've been talking about it prior to Bert going and making that presentation, why is it being delayed? So, it's just so muddy. So, but with that being said, I wanna scoot up to the
Sure.
CPC meeting.
Sure.
So, thank you for your
Go-
time.
Okay.
Go see my daughter now at that one.
Good to see you, Inga.
Likewise,
Thank you,
Serena.
nice to meet
Okay.
you.
And we need to make this room more user-friendly.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much,
We'll see you at our
everyone.
next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
bye.
Okay.
Say hi to Bruce.
I shall.
Alright, did we
So
do the
anything else?
input from the select board? Did you?
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah.
the input was
comments,
the article.
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, well,
They never want to
So,
provide him, it's always
Yeah, it's in there,
vague.
that's why I gave you that.
okay.
There's a new one coming out, I guess.
There'll be another article coming out in May.
In
This
May.
What's the
was,
gist of it then with respect to our role?
Just basically, we need a balance of business and.
and of course,
real estate and stuff.
this occurred after the Carvana chaos, so I wasn't sure what they were gonna say. But they said we need a balance. We need some business in town to keep the real estate tax rate, reasonable or keep it a little bit lower. And we need some housing development, and we need a lot of different things.
But this input on EDC role. Input.
Well, that's what I say, based on the article, we've got some kind of a clue of what the town thinks should be going on, what the selectmen and Carl think. Because up until prior to that article, you had no idea, other than they said, well, we've got motocross and we've got the lakes. Yeah, so
I know.
what beyond the fact that those exist?
But what would they like us to do?
Well, that's what I'm saying, they're talking about some kind of a balance in
Yeah,
development,
but
et cetera.
they didn't give specific.
They didn't get into-
specifications of that. Did you weren't at the March 5th
I
for the
was
budget?
not.
Do you wanna read those two comments to him?
Oh, sure. This is from a new member of the Finance Committee.
When they asked for the 2,000 instead of the 600.
What is the benefit of being a member of the chamber? So I explained that the chamber has 2 or 3 events in town every year, and we get 100+ business people, generally from Westfield, who are here, be it at the ranch or at Westfield Bank, when they have their events. So what? I said, maybe some of those businesses might consider opening up in Southwick. I said, we explained to them, and they're all excited when they hear it, the real estate tax rate for business in Westfield is $36 and some odd cents per thousand. In Agawam, it's 34. Here it's 16.98. They go, oh wow. Well, in fact, I just went to the St. Patrick's Day breakfast up in Westfield State last week, and I was talking to some people, and they said, your tax rate's that low? I said, yeah. Wow. I said, we only have public water, public sewer, and natural gas in some parts of town, but we do have Comcast and other providers providing internet, etc. And they said, that's interesting. Because the previous mayor of Agawam, not the current one, but the one before that, he kept saying, every time a microphone would be in front of him, we've got the lowest tax rate in the whole Springfield area. Yeah, residential, he beats us by 50 cents or $1, but on businesses, he nails them to the wall.
So how much do we get?
We never
we don't
know
know
until
yet. We
May,
don't know
until the
yet.
annual
Until
town
the day of the
meeting.
And then what was
meeting.
the second? There was the second one. It's
Um,
lovely.
Work with the master plan committee and come back in 2 to 4 years.
I know, that was-
In other words, after the master plan is developed and all, then we'll know what kind of business we want in town and where parts of town we want business. So then you could come back to us.
That's sad.
Years ago, before I was on this commission, it seems as though economic development had more of a voice. I used to hear more about them.
Right?
Didn't you? You were
Yeah.
on it, right?
Mhm.
Dave Reckley? And I used to hear more about
Fred
economic
Hanks, well, I
development.
mean,
Yeah.
we had,
Because Fred would tell us what's going on south of Southwick, if businesses were happening, because he had
Yeah.
ties into Tilcon, Maringari, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
So what kind of things were you involved in? What did you guys?
well, I mean, we got very involved with the master plan back then, and we spent a lot of time on that. You know, signed bylaw was a big thing
Yeah.
we were very involved with,
Oh, yeah.
and things that pertain to business, and all of a sudden it was like the teeth were pulled, you know, and
The
it's like
sign,
we're just eyewash, you know, and
the,
that's
the,
what
the signed bylaw,
Yeah.
Craig was heavily involved with this
Right.
little subcommittee doing it. They held a meeting at a restaurant up the street.
Yeah, I heard.
At least they got business people's input. I mean, it was a little
Right.
cantankerous, but they got some input. People wanted to know, well, how big can the sign be? And if I already have a sign out there, am I okay? Yeah, your grandfather. But if you put a new sign in, then you're dealing with a new set of rules. It's the same as at the beginning of the meeting tonight, we had Diane Gale tell us a little bit about what she's been pushing with the planning board of putting in some kind of major development rules if someone applies to the planning board to do something. And I told her, I said, there's been nothing in the newspaper and there's nothing on the town website that I can find defining what is a major development or what are the requirements going to be. So she kind of went over them, but she said the planning board is still developing the paperwork as to what the rule would be, and they have to develop that before they can go to town meeting to get it approved. But basically, she said, if you want to build a building that was going to add more than 1,000 vehicle trips per day, or the building is larger than 60,000 square feet, then with your application to the planning board, you'd have to have this other document, which would have all that stuff in the document. It's not a matter of, well, here's the form that you asked for, and at the public hearing, if anyone asks a question, then we'll get you the traffic count data, or we'll get you this data or that data. Her proposal is you have to package all that up and submit it with your application to the planning board. So before the public hearing ever happens, they know, well, how many vehicle trips per day is this gonna impact? You know, is it
Water
gonna use
usage and stuff.
10,000
Yeah.
gallons of water a day, or, you know, whatever it might be? Because that was the thing with Carvana. It was coming out in pieces. of the traffic count, here it is. All the water, based on the amount of water we use in other facilities, we'll get you that in a couple of weeks. Also, we'll get you that in a couple of weeks. So her proposal is you'd have all that on day one at the public hearing. So I don't know if that'll get approved in annual town meeting or if it'll even show up at the annual town meeting if they get their paperwork together in time.
They'd have to vote on that?
Yeah, the
That
public
proposal?
would have to vote in, because if you're changing zoning laws,
But the thing is that I don't understand, like, so if she's proposing it,
Uh-huh.
then they get to change it however they want, and
she's
then it
working
goes-
with the planning board
Oh, I see.
so that there's one proposal. Otherwise, it would be a citizen proposal coming to the annual town meeting just by a citizen without involvement or participation by the planning.
So if you
board.
don't fit that criteria, would you not go to a public meeting? So they're kinda like screening them
I-
ahead of time?
I'm not sure. Since we have no paper document that you can sit and read.
Right.
There is some speculation on the street that Wally Computer wants to add on. I have no idea how much they want to add on or anything else, but there's little subtopics either at the planning board or selectmen's meeting where somebody makes some comment. Well, we want to add to the building or we want to add on, but that's all that's said. It's almost like some kind of secret handshake or something in some fraternal organization. You know there's something there, but you don't really know what it is. So anything else?
No, let's propose to end the
Okay.
formal, and then we.
Okay, it's 7:18. We're gonna end the meeting.